Welcome to the horror film and fashion series. Today we're diving into the 1965 horror film Repulsion. Hi, if you're new here, my name is Ashley and I'm a lover of 60s and 70s fashion, the horror movies, of course, movies in general, TV, music, everything in between, just not the values. And if that's something you're into, stick around and hit subscribe. Now, those of you that aren't new here, you're probably noticing something different. I have new glasses. Fun fact is I wear glasses, but I never really wore them in pictures or on screen just because I felt like they were part of my old era of who I was. And so I was searching near and far for some fun, kind of retro inspired glasses, and this is what I stumbled upon. So, yeah, I love them, and it's a good time. So, other than that, nothing else is new here, but let's get into it. Let's get into the horror film Repulsion. So, what we do on this channel when we do this series is we talk about the film itself and then the peak moments of the film. And lastly, my favorite part, the fashion. So, let's get into it. Repulsion was released in 1965. It was Roman Polanski's first English language film about a young, beautiful manicurist named Carol, played by Catherine Deneuve. Now, if I said that wrong, I'm sorry. I really, really tried. That is not my strong suit. She suffers from androphobia. Now, what that is the pathological fear of interaction with men. When her sister and roommate, Helen, leaves their London flat to go on an Italian holiday with her married boyfriend, problematic there, Carol withdraws into her apartment. She then begins to experience frightful hallucinations, her fear gradually turning into madness, and she slowly unravels. Now, this film is all about the buildup. It is all about watching the unraveling of this woman and her slow descent into madness. So it may seem like it starts off really slow, but there's a reason for it. And it's really to showcase what is happening to this woman. And it keeps you intrigued for sure. And just how beautifully shot it is. Now, love him or hate him, Roman Polanski is an extremely talented filmmaker. Putting that personal stuff about him and things like that, you cannot deny that he shoots films like no other person and is just phenomenal in storytelling and a genius when it comes to a distinct type of horror, like a psychological horror. And he will later go on to make Rosemary's Baby, another 60s horror film classic, one of my absolute favorites. And fun fact, it was actually my first ever video I did on YouTube. I was new, I was still learning. I've gotten a little bit better, but I may have to come back around and revisit Rosemary's Baby because it is just such an iconic film. So, enough about that. Let's take a look at this film itself and some of the peak moments. Here we go. Now, the first thing that I absolutely loved was the beginning, the introduction, the title sequence. It was a basically like zoom in of Carol, the lead character's eyes, and it kind of shows how she's feeling. And you see that in that scene. It kind of depicts how she's kind of a little bit paranoid, a little bit unhinged. And then you zoom out and you see her face, and that starts the movie. And I think that was an amazing introduction to this film. Now, I also noticed that to show the character unraveling, Roman Polanski uses a lot of music and certain scenes with the music to showcase that, like the slow descent into madness. And I love the fact that he showed a lot of that through scenes of Carol, the main character, walking home or to and from work. And you get to see number one, the street scene. You get to see like the time capsule of 1960s a city, like city life and the outfits. And I love that. But also you slowly see the descent of this character by her appearance, how she's walking, how she starts to eventually like twitch and touch her face, in kind of a maddening way. And the music starts off in like that first walking scene, really upbeat, kind of groovy. And then it slowly kind of transitions into this eerie, ominous kind of music. And I love that storytelling that Roman Polanski does with that. I think it's just genius. There are some really iconic shots that are then used in Rosemary's Baby. Also, I just noticed there is a string from sewing on the mic. This is also my sewing room. Fun fact. All right, let's get back to it into it. Now, there are some shots that are very much used in Rosemary's Baby that I love. And they're shots of like reflection. So, for example, there's a shot of Carol looking into a kettle and it's her reflection. And then there's a view through the peephole, which is definitely used in Rosemary's Baby. And I love it. I love that like peephole shot. And I just think it's very iconic to the way Roman Polanski shoots. Now, again, it's a slow build. So, where it starts to kind of build is where Carol is in her bed and she is constantly like noticing certain things in the apartment, which slowly shows her descent into madness. And this is, she starts to see cracks in the wall, AKA cracks in her, like slowly unraveling. But she also starts to kind of hear certain sounds. And this is like a vent in the heater or whatever it is. It's some sort of vent. She also constantly hears footsteps. At first, they're footsteps of her sister living in the apartment with her. And she does often hear her sister and her boyfriend like going at it. And it's like an uncomfortable, eerie kind of like feeling for yourself, and you kind of can feel for her in that you're like, this is uncomfortable. I feel that she's uncomfortable. And then the shadows in her dark room. Now this is just kind of an introduction into her world, and then you slowly see that unraveling. This suitor is really trying to pursue Carol. He genuinely really likes her, and she again is just really put off by men in general. And he takes her home because he finds her out on the streets, kind of like wandering and a little bit sad and flustered. And he drives her home and he is sitting in the car with her and he kisses her. And she kind of just like lets him, but then she gets really frantic and she like jumps out of the car, almost gets like hit by a car, runs upstairs, frantically brushes her teeth, is wiping her mouth, and she's in this like manic state of like repulsion, hence the name of the movie. And it's just a brilliant scene to show just how paranoid she is with when it comes to men, like, and how repulsed she is. And this is like kind of the kickstart of where it gets worse. Now, another thing that shows that she's definitely losing it is there was this rabbit meat her sister never cooked left in the fridge. She takes it out and she basically leaves it out. So now the rabbit meat is rotting and there's like flies constantly around it. She pays no bother. Like it's just normal and kind of almost like showcasing like symbolism that she's slowly rotting because of her like hate for men and paranoia with men. And walls are cracking more, or she's seeing the walls are cracking more, telling of there's more cracks in her now. She's slowly again unraveling. But it's also one of these weird things where you're like, is she crazy or is this really happening to her? And I feel like Roman Polanski does a really good job at that, not only in this film, but in Rosemary's Baby, because you are like, is Rosemary crazy or is this really happening? And this is, I think, such a brilliant way to tell a story through film, the way that he makes you go through all of these emotions. And then you have basically like the climax of the movie where it gets really intense. You have another peephole shot of her suitor who comes to check on her, and this amazing like shot that is the suitor and Carol talking. The door is open and you see down the hall the neighbor watching. And it's such a great shot. Like it's so like beautifully shot. And unfortunately, this suitor has a bad end. Spoiler alert. Um, you see this shot through the peephole and it's shot amazing. You kind of see a peephole shot and then a swing of a candlestick, and boom, Carol hits him with it. He's done. But what's even creepier is the next scene of her singing and sewing like nothing has happened. She's then having hallucinations of taking down her covers and finding a man there. Again, hallucinating this man taking advantage of her. But you're also like, is this real? Is this happening? Because it's so in and out of like reality. But this is her reality, even though it's not real. We have the landlord that comes for rent. He just wants the money. She gives it to him. And then he comes on to her, but we're like, is this real or is this in her imagination? Because she imagines all men are pretty much evil. And spoiler alert again, she kills him with that razor that was next to the rabbit. A little symbolism there. And this visual after of her in this light nightgown with bloodstains on it, almost in a daze. Like she has lost it. And this morbid music is playing and more cracks are showing in the ceiling. She's gone. And it leads to basically the climax of the movie where you have the sister and boyfriend coming back from their little trip, and the sister finds this apartment that is just a mess and eventually makes her way to the bathroom, finds the dead body in the tub. You don't see the dead body or anything, you just see her reaction. Then you just see the boyfriend's reaction, which I thought and reminded me of Rosemary's Baby at the end, where you see all the reactions of people seeing the baby, but you never see the baby. And I love that because I honestly think in horror, it's scarier to imagine what you think happened than to actually see it sometimes. And I thought that was, again, brilliant. Love that because you can only imagine what that body looked like by that time. And then you have like the last image of the film, which kind of like gives you a conclusion that you can come up with of like what went on here, like why this woman went so mad, and maybe why she had this fear of men. And that is an old picture of her and her family, which you do see at the beginning of the film. But what this picture zooms in on is just her and like a man. I'm assuming like a relative of some sort. And you zoom in on her distinctly, and she is staring kind of almost in a way, looking at this man like he's evil and she's disgusted by him. So it leads you to believe that maybe she had some sort of, with this family member, there was some inappropriate relationship. And so this is probably what started her paranoia of men. And it's like, wow, that is insane. But what's brilliant about this film is it's not like a horror in the sense of, you have your Rosemary's Babies, you have your Halloweens, you have, your the Birds and Psycho. This is more of a real psychological like thriller where it takes you into the depths of like the human mind and how people can go mad, but how tragic it can truly be. And it was really ahead of its time in just the subject matter, and definitely probably shocking for 1965, but what a brilliant film. It really is a great psychological horror. So if you're into that sort of horror, this is the film for you. If you're not, it probably might bore you. You might be like, eh. But if you love a beautifully shot film, this is amazing. And I will say, Carol, the lead character, is just beautiful. Like, oh, she's beautiful. And a great actress at that. So let's get into my favorite thing, the fashion. Repulsion was from 1965. So let's talk about the fashion in 1965 first. It was all about the youthquake. It was a youthful revolution. And this really made rise for the mod movement, which is my favorite. Geometric shift dresses And drumroll, please. The mini skirt, we love her. Now, key trends in 1965 were definitely the mod aesthetic. And this was defined by mini skirts, A-line and shapeless shift dresses, and black and white color combinations, as well as colorful patterns and bold colors. Also, space age futurism, which was introducing pieces made with PVC specifically, metal, and heavy plastics. It featured streamlined silhouettes and metallic fabrics with geometric cutouts, which we love here. We also had the emergence of pop art influence, and this was all about bold, color block geometric patterns and inspired a lot of the time by contemporary art. Now, as for the fashion of this movie, it definitely was kind of leaning towards the mod aesthetic. The first outfit that I truly loved from this film was, of course, Carol. And it's in the walking scene. She's in a flowered button up with a collar. And I would say the fabric is almost like a silk type of pattern. It looked like it was probably polyester. Chef's kiss. And a midi dress, so hitting kind of mid length with a beautiful small purse. I think this is a great mid 60s look. And she had these brilliant kitten heels, of course, which were all the rage. Now, my absolute favorite of Carol's is this pattern dress with a tie. It also has buttons like up top and these great pockets. I love a pocket. And it has a collar and it's midi length, so mid length. And this is my absolute favorite dress of hers. I love it. Like, I want this dress. And I don't even know actually what color this dress is. The pattern on it is amazing. And I'm just imagining maybe a green and mustard yellow moment, which I'm here for. So, in my mind, that's what it looks like. I probably should look up imagery to see if there's any colored pictures of it because I really do enjoy this dress. And you see this dress throughout the film. She continues to wear it, like she wears the same clothes over and over again to show she's unraveling. So you get a lot of action and get to see this dress a lot, which thank you for that. Now, she does wear a lot of nightgowns in this film, and I loved all of them. She has a beautiful white nightgown with ruffled sleeves and the collar the same. It's ruffled and beautiful. She has some that have like embellishments on it or a little design. And then she has this like sheerish polka dot nightgown, and that one also has ruffles on the sleeves and collar. So I love it. I think these are adorable. They are kind of probably on my wish list now as like dream nightgowns. If you know me, you know I love a good 60s and 70s nightgown. I love just nightwear in general from this era. I think it is iconic. And I really, again, wish this wasn't in black and white so we could see the maybe amazing colors these nightgowns were. Now, overall, the fashion in this movie was pretty good. It was definitely a sign of the times of 1965. We were on the cusp of kind of like really hardcore mod movement. So I think it did well in showcasing that. And it wasn't my favorite for fashion of the 60s for sure, but it was a great horror movie. Let me repeat that. It was more of a great psychological horror movie. So if you love the 60s and you love horror, this is a really great film. And I feel like this one is kind of forgotten because of the status of Rosemary's Baby, which, yeah, Rosemary's Baby is iconic. It's like one of my favorite horror movies. But this one shouldn't be left behind. It is great. And it shows the unraveling of someone that has been traumatized. And it does that very, very well. If you love 60s and 70s, and you love fashion, horror movies, music, TV, everything in between, just not the values, check out my other videos and hit subscribe if you'd like. And thank you as always for watching, and I will see you next time.